Welcome to Canadian Innovators, the show that celebrates innovation, entrepreneurs, and the Canadian spirit. I'm Jocelyn, and every week we introduce a new entrepreneur or expert on the economy to tell their stories and unpack the challenges of keeping jobs in Canada, as well as discuss potential solutions for job growth and prosperity. Today on the program, we're going to discuss how academia can foster the entrepreneurial spirit. Joining me today is a man that has spent decades fostering innovation in Canadians. Steven Armstrong began teaching at the U of T in 2009 as an adjunct lecturer in the MEng Elite program. He became a professor of innovation in 2014. His flagship course, Managing Business Innovation and Transformational Change, led to developing a further 6 graduate courses and 2 undergraduate courses. Professor Armstrong has over 25 years of success in the management consulting industry, leading large-scale, deep-impact business transformation initiatives with an initial pedigree in Tier 1 civil aerospace and military aircraft and defense industries in the United States, Canada, and the UK. He spent this management intervention services to other industry sectors, including pharmaceuticals, plastics, food, machinery, automotive, general manufacturing, and entrepreneurial, family-owned, technology-based business. Welcome to the program, Professor Armstrong. That is quite a CV.
Thank you, Jocelyn. It sounds pretty good, actually. Thank you for making it sound so good.
Well, you did all the heavy lifting. So, Professor Armstrong, you have an incredibly interesting story. And before we get to your experience in the innovation, would you share with us your background in the early years?
Well, you can tell by my accent, I wasn't born in Canada. I've been here nearly 38 years, but I'm from Northern Ireland, originally from Belfast, and I grew up there. And basically, in a nutshell, I served a 5-year apprenticeship from the age of 16 to 21. And I'll be honest with you, it was probably the best move I've ever made in my life. It was the foundation, and it was aeronautical engineering with a company called Short Brothers in Harland, which became Bombardier Aerospace in 1989 and was just sold a year ago to Spirit Aerospace out of the United States. But they were famous for their apprenticeship, and the British trained their engineers through apprenticeship programs. So I did the classic 5-year, very structured process. Each year you built upon your competencies and capabilities. And then I went to university in London and got an honors in mechanical engineering degree after, and then qualified 4 years later as a chartered mechanical engineer with the Institution of Mechanical Engineers UK. So that was like a 12-year process. And I'd immigrated to Canada about 2 years before I got my chartership, became a professional engineer in Ontario, and worked in the area of composite materials with aerospace companies. I did contract work at Hughes Helicopters in Los Angeles, de Havilland. I even did work at IBM doing design work and CAD/CAM systems. And it was at IBM when I first got exposed to CAD/CAM and MR, well, CAD/CAM mainly. And I got myself a permanent job with ABB, ASEA Brown Boveri in Mississauga. I left the aerospace sector and I wanted to settle down. I left California and came back to Toronto, and it's been my base ever since. But it was at ABB when I got this ERP systems implementation, and I became a manager at the age of 26 of about 30 people in manufacturing engineering. So there were 2 things happening. My career as a mechanical or an aeronautical mechanical manufacturing engineer ended pretty much in my 26 years old. And I then was in management and really got a passion for advanced manufacturing systems and people management. And while we were implementing this Honeywell ERP system, I got exposed to these consultants. I think it may have been Deloitte or one of those companies, Deloitte and Touche at the time. And I started to see what consultants did. And I was also working with Honeywell consultants. Bottom line, I was 3 years at ABB, then I left and joined Honeywell as in what they called a manufacturing consultant, but it was really marketing, to tell you the truth. Then I found my way to KPMG through my volunteer work with the Society of Manufacturing Engineers, etc. And I joined KPMG. They were called Ernst & Winnie in those days. I was there for 5 years and became principal in charge of advanced manufacturing systems.
So
And there,
I'm gonna hold you there because we have to go to break. A
all right.
fascinating story. We're gonna hear more about your background and how you've
Sorry.
contributed innovation in academia in Canada. We'll be right back at Canadian Innovators. Welcome back. You're watching Canadian Innovators. I'm here with Professor Steven Armstrong from the University of Toronto Innovation Division. Before we went to break, Steven, you were telling us about your journey. Let's jump right back into it.
What I did was give you the foundational part, but basically after KPMG, I built my own management consulting firm and specialized in aerospace and defense. And that lasted about 20 years. And I then took the same skills, business transformation for C-level executives, driving change inside companies, newspaper industry, food industry, automotive. And I formed a special relationship with a company that you had on your program previously, Samco Machinery, and helped them over a 15-year period, helped the son, Bob, take ownership of the business, a most rewarding experience. In 2009, I needed a break. I actually, in 2007, left industry for a while and did a master's degree in the history and philosophy of science and technology at U of T. It changed my life dramatically. And I found my way into teaching then, and I only did it as a hobby. And now, 12 years later, I have 6 graduate master's courses in innovation, operations management, management consulting for engineers, aerospace operations management. I work with Bombardier, de Havilland. I work with Price Waterhouse, Deloitte, KPMG, and Safran in aerospace, different, and other, including Samco and other industry companies. I put students in with them. I basically took my real world experience and packaged it into a series of academic master's subjects within the MEng and Masters of Applied Science, and many PhD students attend them, and medical doctors, I might add. So that's what I did. I took all 30 years of experience, packaged it into a series of full semester, 13, 14-week courses, delivered 100% online, and hybrid courses, etc.
Wow, extraordinary, taking real life experience and translating it into academia versus the other way around, which we see a lot in academia today.
Yeah.
So extraordinary. So let's focus on manufacturing. A lot of people love to talk about manufacturing. Tell us about some of the highlights in technology that you have helped to foster.
And back in the 1980s, the big deal was CAD/CAM and ERP systems. And I just became so passionate about it. I try to instill that in the students. I try to tell them, if your passion is artificial intelligence or machine learning, try to find an industry sector that you enjoy, like AI in hospitals. For example, healthcare. My main interest was in computer integrated manufacturing, and I would attend all the trade shows in the United States and so on. And that is how I'm implementing them, like getting bottom line implementation inside companies. That is where I really got my pedigree. And that is that doing that real work, real implementation inside, like at ABB, for example, working with shop floor people. It's doing that kind of work that allowed me the foundation to be an effective management consultant. So that led to then enterprise-wide transformational change. So from the technology implementation, then I got into the people area, the conflict management, team building, executive team building, cascading the change down the organization. But it was all built in a solid technical background.
Yeah, wonderful. And I know right now our company is going through an ERP implementation, and that is a painful journey.
Yeah, the politics. So I specialized in steering committees and managing the politics. And there's a question I wanted to be quick. So you did mention it earlier, which was what in my background influenced me the most was growing up in Belfast during the Troubles in the 1970s, killings, bombings, assassinations, 24/7, all the time. So growing up in that environment led me to always want to understand human relationships, why people do, like what the history was. And I went back to the Normans and the first Norman and all the implications of the Normans coming to England and then to Ireland, and then the Reformation happened. Why am I telling you that? Because that impacted my career. I became a team builder. conflict resolution, problem solving, and solution development. I could never achieve that in my homeland simply because the troubles and the complexity of what went on had 1,000 years of history. We're in a company where you're bounded by rules. You have a CEO that can support the authority to get the job done. I could be effective. So in many ways, I took my troubled, it wasn't a troubled childhood, it was a good childhood, but I took the troubles where I came from and created a system where I could actually make things work.
Okay.
And that's what led to consulting.
Phenomenal story. We have to go to break. We'll be right back on Canadian Innovators. Welcome back. My guest today is Steven Armstrong, Professor of Innovation at the University of Toronto. Just a fascinating tale. We were talking a little bit about your journey before we went to break, and I was going to ask you, is there one student in particular that you would like to highlight that stood out for you?
To be honest, I would say no, there isn't, because they're all wonderful. I mean, the grading system is basically you've got to have a B+ to A+. And I've processed about 3,000 students through my master's courses, 300 project teams with reports and all the rest, research. To be honest, there's probably 50 of those 3,000 I would give an A+ to. And there are many, they're all wonderful. To be honest with you, the university's gatekeeping system that brings in these students from all over the world is absolutely brilliant. And they volunteer for the courses. They're not forced into them. So they're passionate. So I couldn't put any particular student being better than anyone else. They're all truly wonderful. Like, without exception, you just don't get difficult students in the master's programs because they volunteer. They want to be there. They're passionate.
Well, your passion is inspiring. I certainly hope my son, who's in university right now, has a professor just like you. Professor, you assisted in inspiring your students to create some of the most innovative technology. Let's talk about some of the highlights of that innovation that you've seen through your students.
Well, what's amazing is the work that they do is original. All of it's original. So, like, for example, when they work with Bombardier or de Havilland or Safran, they're actually working on a work that these companies are very seriously interested in. Like, there's no money exchanged here. There's no payment for any of this. This is for academic accreditation. And these companies give up their time, like KPMG or Pricewaterhouse. So they give the students actual problems that they're having. For example, what should Pricewaterhouse do to open up a market opportunity and applying artificial intelligence to the hospitals or the healthcare industry? Samco Machinery, who may have an issue with their product development process, how should they bring in new business processes to, for example, reduce the failure rate of products going out the door? The students will study that and give them their assessment. And then I'm overseeing all that work because I have that kind of knowledge. So there are, and it's all on my website, amgimanagement.com, and just choose my name and then under it, University Teaching, and you'll see all the projects. So there's over 300 and they're all modern, relevant. So they're dealing with the latest thinking of artificial intelligence, machine learning, 3D printing, but not only that, also on how to open up markets for consulting, for example. Or one, just tell you one quick one was a super center, designing a super center to build the Dacia 400 aircraft in one location, not in a production line, like to build it in one location. So I've had two teams each year, or one team each year work on that, and they're delighted with the work. So it's not me, it's they come up with it all. I love guiding them. My days are done when it comes to digging into the weeds and the details. I get them to do it, and it's most enjoyable.
So I would love to get your take, Stephen, on the state of innovation in Canada. What are your thoughts?
It's really bad. I just have it here. This is from the OECD, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, so United Nations organization. And it's really, this is Canada at the very end. They have three criteria: labor productivity, labor utilization, and potential GDP capita growth. And Canada is number 40. It's the lowest. When I came to this country in the 1980s, this country was known for its great innovators, the Trans-Canada Highway, the Candu Reactor, Ontario Hydro, RIM. I mean, there's just so many great innovations from this country, but it has fallen away really badly. I mean, there are many reasons for this, and it's not me saying this is the statistics. They have Turkey, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Hungary, Poland, Costa Rica, Ireland, the Republic of Ireland, that is, Czech Republic is all way ahead. The United States is in the middle. Britain is even down here with Canada. So there's something has happened. Innovation has fallen away, and the measurements are there, and they're in these international bodies. So this is not me just talking from the top of my head.
It's a dire situation. I agree with you. We need to get innovation back on track. We're going to break. You're watching Canadian Innovators. And we're back. I'm interviewing Steven Armstrong, who is with the U of T and fostering innovation with his courses in the engineering department. Professor Armstrong, this is the part of the show that every week I ask my guest, if they were a politician, what 3 things would they do to grow jobs in the economy? Professor, you're on the hot seat. What would you do?
First of all, if I could never be a politician. I wouldn't last one day in the shoes of a politician, but I definitely have ideas of what needs to be done. I'm working with the past presidents, actually, of Professional Engineers of Ontario as part of a group called Engineers for the Profession. Brilliant people. And what we believe needs to happen is there needs to be a new Ministry of Engineering and Applied Science, and there needs to be an Engineer General, like an Attorney General. So, for example, and these are like integrator roles. Like, for example, the current Minister of Innovation, and I don't know the man, I'm sure he's a good man, but he's a lawyer. He has resume as engineering in his resume, but there's no pedigree there. There's no walking the shop floor. There's no knowledge of designing products, building them, taking them to market. Most of these ministerial offices and politicians are career lawyers or career politicians. There needs to be, like China, more engineers who are trained in public policy, involved in making public policy, or at least overseeing it and coordinating and integrating all the different multidisciplined decision-making skills you need. Canada was one of the great innovators in wealth creation from the 1850s all the way through till the 1950s and 60s. But unfortunately, and like the United States, career politicians are actually destroying it. And it's a sad state. And there's not enough engineers. And I don't mean technical, I mean engineers that have actually created wealth, built businesses, whether small entrepreneurial businesses or large. They need to get into public policy. And many of my courses try to foster that in the master's program. And that master's kind of program should become the minimum for a professional engineering designation. And so I'd bring back apprenticeships. Like, I don't mean trade, professional apprenticeships, engineer apprenticeships, joint university and industry, like they're doing it in the UK now. These are things, and so the talent is there, it just isn't used properly. And most engineers many of them are lost to finance, etc., simply because there isn't a path into these higher levels of thinking that's required for policy making.
Now, I agree 100% with your analysis there. Stephen, one of the things that I've heard from many Canadian companies that moved south of the border is there's a great relationship between the colleges and university and the job creators. And how could we foster that here? Because that's really a missing piece. I love your idea of getting folks in politics that understand the shop floor. But how do we foster that innovation jointly with businesses?
Well, I'm doing it. So again, go to my website, you'll see all the projects. Students, look, the best form of education is experience and academics together. And these internships are fine. They're better than nothing. But compared to a long apprenticeship, a 5-year apprenticeship, they're very lightweight. You go somewhere for 3 months, even a year. I'm saying that while you're learning, you should be working. That's the critical. So a journey of, even if it's 3 months in academia and 4 months in industry, that's something. But the best is where you're working every week and you're studying as well. So 3 days in the company, 2 days in the university, and where the theory and the practice are simultaneously being learned. And I believe that is the best way to foster students that are ramping up right when they graduate and they become PNGs or some higher level qualification that could give them a management path. But I'm a great believer in deep experience, and I'm trying to do it in a mini way, with one course, trying to expand. The students love it. They say they've never had anything like it. And even if they've had an internship, they still don't get, because these are serious assignments that are being given to them. The companies aren't playing games. They're not trying to get them to go get them a cup of coffee. This is a serious deliverable.
Fascinating conversation, Steven Armstrong. I love having time spending with you. What a fascinating conversation. That's all the time I have today. Thanks to my guest, Steven Armstrong, Professor of Innovation at the U of T. Canada is a leader in developing and fostering innovation. We have to do more to develop and foster the entrepreneurial spirit in our young people in order that we can compete on the world stage. I'm Jocelyn Bamford. Thank you for watching Canadian Innovators.